Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking something that is incredibly heavy but absolutely crucial to understand. We are digging into a highly detailed, frankly staggering forensic dossier. This source material meticulously documents how administrative paperwork, or more accurately, the deliberate absence of it, was allegedly weaponized to hide mass atrocities and human rights violations in India between 1984 and 2002. We're going to be relying strictly on the data, the legal frameworks, and the historical records presented in these sources to understand this massive, complex architecture of state violence.
Okay, let's dive right into this. 2097. According to the investigative records cited in our sources and specifically confirmed by the Central Bureau of Investigation, this is the exact number of illegal, unrecorded cremations carried out in just one single district of Punjab, Amritsar, and this was just during the counterinsurgency period. I really want you to keep this number in the back of your mind as we go, because it anchors us to the sheer, systemic scale of the events we're analyzing today.
You know, the central thesis of the entire dossier we're exploring is perfectly captured right here. It presents this chilling paradox of bureaucracy. Basically, when a state allegedly utilizes missing records to conceal its actions, the silence itself becomes the primary evidence. We aren't just looking at what was written down, we're analyzing a structural system of deliberate non-awareness, a system where officials are accused of literally using blank pages to hide extrajudicial actions. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the paradox of paperwork, move into the custodial model in Punjab, look at the mechanism of erasure, discuss sexual violence as a weapon, examine the Gujarat parallel, and wrap up with the architecture of impunity. Section 1. The paradox of paperwork, or what happens when silence hides the truth. So the crucial point we need to understand is found in the Code of Criminal Procedure. Section 174 mandates that police have to report any unnatural or suspicious death to an executive magistrate. Then Section 176 requires that magistrate to conduct an official inquiry into the cause of death, and this is especially strict for cases of state custody. But the sources argue that this specific, legally required machinery was entirely shut off by district administrators in Punjab. The fail-safes absolutely existed on paper, but the paperwork was simply never filed. Section 2. The custodial model. Let's look at Punjab from 1984 to 1996. Take a look at this rapid succession of events leading up to the military assaults on the Golden Temple, famously known as Operation Blue Star. In March, a resisting senior superintendent of police is suddenly removed. Then, on June 3rd, the district commissioner of Amritsar is replaced. The very next day, June 4th, literally as the military operation begins, Ramesh Inder Singh takes over as the new DC. Immediately following Blue Star, the sweeping rural arrests of Operation Woodrose kick off. The dossier really highlights how officials who allegedly resisted bending the rules were systematically replaced right before massive military action. And our source material makes a pretty profound assertion here. The newly installed district commissioner, Ramesh Inder Singh, is accused by the dossier of facilitating a massive cover-up. But here's the catch. He didn't do it by issuing illegal orders. Instead, the claim is that he facilitated the erasure by remaining completely silent, by not generating the inquest reports, not ensuring bodies were identified before mass cremation, and just actively avoiding documentation altogether. Section 3. The mechanism of erasure, hiding in plain sight. Now, what's really interesting about this process is the sheer dependency on bureaucratic inaction. Step 1, a person is detained without any official arrest record and dies in custody. Step 2, the body is illegally cremated, often just processed as an unidentified person. Step 3, the administration stays completely silent, failing to initiate any of those mandatory legal inquiries we discussed a minute ago. Every single stage depended entirely on the administration deliberately not creating the required paperwork. And to put the scale of this into perspective, we have to consider the financial driving force behind it. According to U.S. State Department reports that are heavily cited in the dossier, there were over 41,000 cash bounty payments made to police between 1991 and 1993. Officers were reportedly receiving around 50,000 rupees per killing of a suspected militant. The text argues this created a massive, deadly financial incentive for unrecorded extrajudicial killings, constantly fueling this cycle of erasure. Section 4. Sexual violence as a weapon. We're shifting focus to one of the darkest chapters of this archive. It is important to note that these horrifying accounts of systematic sexual violence in police custody don't just come from one isolated source. They were heavily corroborated by multiple global human rights organizations during their field research in the 1990s. We are reporting these findings neutrally, strictly based on these extensive institutional records. The dossier makes a very specific analytical argument here. It argues that this wasn't simply a tragic byproduct of a few rogue officers acting out. Instead, it was an institutional, highly calculated method. Women were allegedly detained without any record, often used as leverage to force their male relatives to surrender. The text notes explicit reports of violence used to completely break the spirit of the minority population and, terrifyingly, even to try and alter demographic realities. Section 5. The Gujarat Parallel, a Structural Comparison. And this brilliantly illustrates a stark contrast drawn by the dossier between two devastating tragedies. On one side, Punjab utilized a hidden custodial model. The violence happened in secret police facilities and bodies were erased through administrative mass cremations. On the other side, Gujarat in 2002 utilized a public pogrom model. There, the violence was conducted in broad daylight by organized mobs attacking Muslim neighborhoods. But here's where it gets incredibly unsettling. Despite those totally different initial methods of violence, both share an identical administrative signature. In Punjab, evidence was destroyed by cremating bodies before civil surgeons could even examine them. In Gujarat, evidence of sexual violence was destroyed by mobs intentionally burning bodies immediately at the site of the attack. Administratively, while Punjab ignored the KRPC mandates, authorities in Gujarat allegedly utilized defective first information reports and just ignored medical documentation. Both systems weaponized missing paperwork to destroy forensic evidence of sexual violence. Section 6. The Architecture of Impunity. How the institutions actually responded. The numbers here show the stark, undeniable reality of systemic impunity. Out of those 2,097 confirmed illegal cremations in just the Amritsar district alone, only 30 criminal cases were ever filed. That is a prosecution rate of roughly 1.4%. And out of those 30 cases, 0 convictions for the act of illegal cremation itself. The administrative wall held completely strong. And the dossier draws a final, sweeping conclusion about how the system functioned. It alleges that the state consistently rewarded compliance over conscience. Officers who facilitated the administration's goals, like DC Ramesh Inder Singh, were reportedly rewarded with prestigious national honors like the Padma Shri and promoted to governorships and chief secretary roles. Conversely, officers who resisted, who raised legal objections, or who resigned in protest, they were removed, forced on to leave, or even imprisoned. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If a state relies on documentation to hold itself accountable, what happens when the architects of the violence are the exact same officials holding the pens? Paperwork is often the only thing standing between a citizen and state violence. As the dossier argues, these blank pages, these missing death certificates and erased records are historically profound. They aren't an absence of evidence. They actually are the evidence. I really hope this explainer has given you a clearer, more structured understanding of this incredibly heavy and critical subject. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the silence.